just to clarify, when I say other people's stupidity, I'm certainly not talking about our
Right.
listeners, but those who are featured in these articles.
Yes, exactly. But if you want to share your own stupidity, that's fine too. We'll
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 336. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. Thank you for those of you who have returned for more, for you longtime listeners, I really appreciate you listening. And for those of you who are new, I appreciate you being here as well. And I hope you will enjoy what you hear today, and you'll stick around. Come back for more next week. Maybe check out our 6+ years worth of back catalog content. We've been doing this since 2016. And as I said, we got 335 previous episodes in the can that for you to peruse. And hope you will do that and come back for more. We've got a fun show for you today. It's our variety show with content from the entire cast, Mia Anstein, Sergeant Bill Sylvia, and the pistol packing Padre, Pastor John Bennett as well. This episode, like all of our episodes, is brought to you by the members of the Reformation Gun Club. We are listener funded, and that means that we do not have any advertising. We do not have any sponsors. We rely on the good men and women who are members of the Reformation Gun Club, who through their annual and monthly contributions help keep the lights on here at Armed Lutheran Radio. Fine folks like William from Duncanville, Texas, Luke from Seymour, Indiana, Ron from Lexington Park, Maryland, JJ from Toms River, New Jersey, Jason from Medina, Ohio, Peter from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, Jerry and Billy from Deer Lodge, Montana, John Nielsen, Robert from Bothell, Washington, and Mike from Hiram, Georgia. Thank you all so much for your support, and to all of the members of the Reformation Gun Club, thank you so much. We really do appreciate all that you do to help keep things going, and we love hanging out with our members. We had our monthly online hangout was it last week? Yeah, it was. And it was a lot of fun. It's always fun to hang out with our members. We do this once a month. And our next one is coming up at the end of November. I think it's November. I sent out the invitation this week. It's on our Facebook page. Go look. Facebook group. There's an event on the Facebook group for the upcoming event. It's the last week of November. On Wednesday, the last Wednesday of November, right? The week after Thanksgiving. So we'll all be full of turkey and other goodies, pumpkin pie and that sort of thing, and we'll have survived Black Friday, and we'll be sharing our stories of Thanksgiving goodness and whatever wonderful gadgets and goodies that we found for Christmas shopping, what deals we found on Black Friday, I guess. But anyway, if you would like to know more about becoming a member of the Reformation Gun Club, what this membership thing is all about, what the membership tiers are, it starts at $15.17 per year, so it's like $1.26 a month. If you break it down, surely you can find those the change in the cushions of your couch, I suspect. And you would get access to our awesome website, hundreds of hours of exclusive content. I try to post new stuff. I try to put stuff up every week. There's all kinds of free goodies for the members. You get some Armed Lutheran swag, and you get invitations to our monthly online hangouts like episode 335. If you would like to see what that's all about, go back to last week's episode. Go check the video out on YouTube, and come join us for technically next month. This is right at the end of October, but we're going to have our next online hangout at the end of November. I think it's the last week of November, so come check it out. Check out all the benefits, all the information at armedlutheran.us/gun club, or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. All right. Today, we are doing, it's a variety show, and this week it's a specific kind of variety show, something we like to call Ask the Armed Lutherans. Now, if you have a question that you would like to ask the members of the cast and have us all answer, be sure to visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. Leave us a voicemail or a voice message or an email. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to answer your questions on the air in a future episode. What we do for these episodes is we take a question from the audience, usually. I think the last time we took a question from Mia, but this time it's a question from the audience. We put it to all of the members of the cast, and we all give our own answers from our own experiences. And this week's question is, what is the most dangerous or reckless thing that you have seen or done on the range? How did you avoid disaster? And what lessons did you learn? Okay, so you'll be hearing the answers from all of our cast members will be answering that question, and I will go first. Several incidents come to mind. There was one, I don't remember how long ago, several years ago, a couple of idiots at a public range in Dallas who were pointing their guns at each other and taking pictures, posing for pictures. The lesson in that incident is pretty obvious, so it would make for a short segment and not really very informative. I mean, obviously the lesson is, 1, don't point guns at other people, and 2, don't be an idiot. But that's really not very useful, so I think I'll talk about this other one that I think I've mentioned in a previous episode, maybe in passing, but I want to expound on it a little bit here, because there is an important lesson in this that I learned and I've applied to my own shooting career, so-called, if you want to call it that. But I'll be leaving out some of the details just to protect the innocent. I don't want to disparage or embarrass the club or the incident or the individual who was involved in the incident or his employer. So when I first got into IDPA, I decided, this was back in 2012, 2013. In the fall of 2013, I decided for some reason that I wanted to shoot the North Carolina State Championship. And this was in the fall of 2013 prior to our move to Texas. The problem was I had not shot a classifier. I had only gone to local matches and shot at local matches. I had not actually classified. So I signed up. The home club there was hosting a classifier match in preparation for the championship, and I signed up. And it was my lucky day. The weather was awful. It was cold. The wind was blowing a little bit. It was drizzling, and it was awful. For those who were with me at the 2019, I think it was 2019 Fall Brawl in Perryville, Arkansas, and remember how that felt, being soaked to the bone, and the wind, and just being, not being able to feel your fingers. It was like that. Targets covered in plastic, frozen hands, tasters that wouldn't stick to the cardboard, everything that goes along with the horribleness of shooting in inclement weather. We were all miserable. Most of the people who didn't really need the classifier said to hell with it, and they went home. Those were the sane people. But I was not one of the sane people, and I stuck it out. My son was more sane. He decided, rather than watch Dad make a fool of himself, he would go sit in the car and keep warm while his crazy father stood out in the rain to shoot the 90-round classifier so that he could be officially classified as a novice. Yeah. I did win first place at the SSP novice at the state match, though. So, best of the worst. Pretty proud of my mediocrity, if I do say so. Anyway, if you know the IDPA classifier, especially if you know the old classifier, the 90-round classifier, you know those matches take forever. They take all freaking day. It starts with a series of stages, or the first stage starts with a series of strings where you basically stand and draw and fire from a stationary position a handful of shots at a single target directly in front of you at, I think it was like 7 yards. And between each string, you reholster without unloading. There's no, if you're just going to fire 2 shots, there's no sense in you unload and show clear. You load you load up the full magazine to whatever your standard capacity is for your division, and you burn your way through the string without reloading between each string. And then when you finish with those, I don't remember how many strings, 5 strings, I think, 4 or 5 strings, then you reload. Anyway, I'm not sure. So we were all so cold, and everybody was kind of impatient, teeth chattering. And we were all ready to go home already. We had only gotten started. And one of my squad mates, who was a local law enforcement officer, stepped up to shoot. And maybe he was impatient because it was cold, which I don't doubt. Maybe he thought, since he's a cop, that he already knows what he's doing. I can't read his mind, and I'm going to put the best construction on everything and assume that he was just cold and he was trying to get through this stage as fast as possible. Because after every string, he would immediately reholster without waiting for the safety officer's command. He would just draw, on the beeper, on the buzzer, he would draw, fire the string, and then immediately put the gun back in the holster. So he was getting ahead of the safety officer. Now, I'm not sure which string it was. It may have been the second, may have been the third. I can't remember exactly. But he got something, I'm going to assume it was his shirt or a part of the cover garment, the vest, in his holster. And when he shoved the gun back in, it went off. It sent a round down his right leg, and it sent the rest of us scrambling for cover. The safety officer, who was standing right next to him, like arm's reach from him, was dancing around checking himself for extra holes. Like, am I bleeding? Am I bleeding? He had apparently a piece of gravel, something flew up and hit him, and he thought he'd been shot. And so he was dancing around trying to figure out if he had an extra hole in himself. The shooter insisted that he was fine and started to limp away. Obviously, he was embarrassed by what had just happened. I don't blame him. But the SO had come to his senses and was having absolutely nothing to do with that. He was having none of it, and he basically, he shut down the entire range. And then we all argued with the guy for a few minutes, refusing to let him leave and drive away until we had cut his pants leg off to make sure he was okay. And he was, for the most part. The round apparently exited the bottom of his holster, went into his pants pocket, destroyed his iPhone, and the phone must have caused the round to change course because it went straight down his pants leg and exited. The only hole in his pants was in his pocket, where the bullet had gone down through his pocket, through his pants leg, and come out right next to his foot. And aside from the shards of cell phone in his leg, he had some pretty, they weren't deep, but it didn't look good. I mean, it wasn't like life-threatening or anything like that. It didn't look pleasant. He had plastic and I assume glass from the screen shattered into his leg. But I think the worst of the injury was to his pride. Because here he was, law enforcement guy. He had his badge. He was making no bones about the fact that he was law enforcement. And now he had just committed, the ultimate sin on the range and gotten himself DQ'd. So, but he was lucky that he didn't end up with an extra hole in his body somewhere. And the lesson I learned from that was that from that moment forward, I was extremely careful to wait for each and every range command from the safety officer before performing them. I don't even, when the first command after you're finished is, if you are finished, unload and show clear, and then you drop the, how does it go? Unload and show clear, drop the, you basically, you release the slide, or you drop the hammer. I think that's the next command. See how long it's been since I've been a safety officer. I can't remember the sequence of commands. But essentially what you do is you lock the slide open or hold the slide open, show it to the safety officer, and when he gives you the command, he says, I see it, pull the trigger. It used to be drop the hammer, pull the trigger, holster, range is safe. I've seen people who will, as soon as the guy says, unload and show clear, they show him, and then they immediately drop the slide and pull the trigger. I don't even do that. I absolutely wait for every command. I am fastidious about that. And I trace that back to this incident back in 2013. I absolutely do not get ahead of the safety officer for any reason. Even when the command is something trivial, I simply wait. And I know I've seen safety officers get kind of impatient with me because they're expecting, I guess they're used to other shooters just going ahead and getting ahead of them. But I wait for if you don't tell me, I'm not going to do it. Right? Unload and show clear. I see it. All right. Well, you better tell me to pull the trigger because I'm not going to do it until you tell me. And I've had safety officers actually get a little impatient because I didn't, or seemed to be a little impatient because I hadn't gone ahead and done what he expected. So that guy was super, super lucky that he was not badly injured. And we all were, because none of us were way back beyond the boundary. We were fairly close when it happened. That round could have easily ricocheted off that heart. Fortunately, I think partly fortunately that it was rainy and wet. Usually the ground at that range is pretty hard packed. That could have easily ricocheted and injured someone else as well. The safety officer thought it had. So the lesson for you is this: don't get ahead of yourself. Don't think that you know so much that you can't be taught something, or that you don't have to wait for the safety officer to tell you to do something, even if it seems trivial, like holstering your weapon. Because what that guy's impatience prevented was the safety officer from actually making sure that he could safely holster. I have had safety officers stop me and fix my shirt or hold my cover garment back before giving me the command to holster. And because he got ahead of the safety officer didn't have time to see whether or not his holster was clear. So don't get ahead of yourself. Don't be too impatient. Gun safety is too important. It is your ultimate responsibility, especially if you carry a gun in public, whether concealed or open carry, it doesn't matter. Never get in such a hurry that you neglect the rules of gun safety. That's the big lesson that I took, and I carried that forward, and I never got ahead of a safety officer. I don't think I ever did anyway, but that really reinforced for me the idea that you better wait. Don't get ahead of yourself. Always wait for the safety officer's commands. So that's the lesson for you from me today is take gun safety seriously. It's your responsibility. And if you get in a hurry and neglect those simple gun safety rules, it can come back and bite you. Thankfully, that was a lesson learned without serious injury, at least physical injury. I know there might have been some psychological injury and some injury to the shooter's pride, but what about you? Visit our feedback page and comment or comment on YouTube or the Facebook page when this episode is posted. We'd love to hear about your experiences and the lessons that you've learned and share those in a future episode. And if you have a question that you would like us to answer in a future episode of Ask the Armed Lutherans, please leave a comment there as well. It's time for me to turn the show over to the rest of my amazing cast. Mia Anstein is up first, then Sergeant Bill, and then Pastor John Bennett will round out the show. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and I will talk to you again next week.
Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstein.
Hey, hi, hello. I am so happy that it's fall. I hope that you are as well. The cooler temperatures are very nice to have nowadays, and it's just wonderful to have hunting season. I have been missing a little hunting season. I traveled to Washington, D.C. to go talk to legislators about Second Amendment issues. I have also been up to Montana to learn a little more about wolves and how ranchers like myself might live with them, since we have them in Colorado and we're slated to get some more. And now I am actually in Texarkana, Texas, picking up my 2 blue heelers. They are Australian cattle dogs, and they've been in school learning how to herd, and that may have been one of their collars that you just heard jingle. So I apologize if you hear some background noise. Since I am traveling, I'm trying to find quiet spaces, but they're not always the greatest. Anyway, today I wanted to visit with you about some incidents at ranges. Since I am a firearms instructor, I always line people out immediately when we get to the range. I tell them safety rules, I tell them where our muzzles must be, I tell them where they must be, and give them the what for before we even get going, because I do not want any incidents at my range. And as an instructor, I am also a hunter education instructor. And today, what I want to talk to you about isn't something that's quite dangerous or reckless yet. And actually, it does lean on the reckless side. I teach hunter ed to youth, adults, men, women, children. Anybody who is old enough to comprehend and pass the test may take hunter education. And it's something that I really enjoy immensely. It is a great project. Whether anyone wants to hunt or not, it's great to learn about wildlife, conservation, and how the whole system works, since us humans are overtaking the habitat of wild animals. So I do highly suggest hunter education if you haven't taken it yet. Now, today, I want to talk to you about an experience at the range, when we go to the range for hunter education, we shoot seated position, kneeling position, and just kind of get the basics of firearm safety and how to look down an open sight of a .22 rifle. So it's pretty basic. They're usually bolt action rifles, pretty easy. With our scenarios, we are always ultimately safe. We have plenty of help. That's usually not a huge issue. Occasionally, you'll get an antsy youngster that doesn't know how to keep their bottom on the ground, and they might move their muzzle about, and those are ones that get closer attention so that you can point their muzzle downrange and remind them, make sure they're safe. What I want to talk to you about or share with you today is actually an incident with a 15-year-old who was learning to hunt, and he attended class with his mother. And I apologize for a loud vehicle that just went by as well. My apologies, guys. But so they attended class together. The young man and the mother passed with flying colors. The mother came because she wanted to learn about firearms as well. She actually booked a class with me later so that she could learn more, and that is wonderful because that's what we want to do. We want to keep practicing. We want to learn as much as we can and be the best that we can with our firearms. She actually came to the line separate of her son, and her son came to the line, and we're in seated position, and he starts firing on command. We do stuff on command and then later at your own pace, but on command he's firing, and his first shots, the look in his eye, I want to tell you, it creeped me out. It really did. I've never felt that feeling before at a range. The look in his eye creeped me out, and I watched him, and he was actually on the other end of the line next to my assistant that was helping at the range. And the second shot on command, he fires again. Well, after you shoot the first two, we check, make sure that shots are hitting on target. And this young man, he was so excited to be shooting this gun. I thought, my goodness, he must be hitting really well. We're only shooting at about 20 yards. So we look, I can't see any shots on his target. So I look again, no shots on the target. What my concern was, as I said, the look in his eye. It wasn't a pleasant feeling, and it was my first experience with this type of elation from a youngster at the gun range. And I'm just going to be quite frank with y'all. It creeped me out. I went and sat directly beside the young man. I had a little talk with him about these being real firearms. This is live fire. This is not a joke. Anything you hit will be destroyed. And I didn't like that word with this guy. Usually that's a word that my dad used with me because you can't take the shot back. And you and I, hopefully you that are listening, you know that as well. Anyway, I sat there and I worked with him and I talked to him and I visited with him, and I really wanted to make sure and impress upon him that this is not a game. Shooting guns is not a game. And I'm saying it in that tone of voice because this is not a game, and that young man had played some games. I am saying he played some video games. And after class, I did the best I could in class. And after class, I visited with my cohorts and I told them the feeling that I got. And I asked them, and they kind of like, yeah, they saw it too. And apparently they had experienced this before with other youngsters that had played video games. And they had seen this before. Well, I won't say that they're immune to what they saw because they weren't. But what they said kind of blew my mind. You're not teaching them to be the next school shooter. You are teaching them everything good, right, correct, and safe. And you're teaching them ethics because we teach all this in Hunter Ed class. You're teaching them all the good things. It's up to their parents and their families at home. And this is really upsetting to me because of all that we have going on in our nation and the things that we all fight for. And I apologize, it's starting to rain now. I've since read this book. A friend of mine suggested it, Lanny Barnes. She's a biathlete. She suggested it, and I have listened to it on audiobook and I read it. Assassination Generation. This is a book by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, and Assassination Generation, it's about video games, aggression, and the psychology of killing. And this is something that I think all of you should read. I hope that you either read it or listen to the audiobook. I really needed the audiobook first because it's pretty deep. And I'll just cut to the chase. These video games are teaching these youngsters how to use firearms better than you and I, and they've never even used a live firearm. Now, this kid obviously hasn't played all the video games that are talked about in this video, but one of the author, he cites a thing, a 14-year-old boy shoots 8 students in a prayer circle at his school. Well, these shootings, they're learning how to be accurate and shoot point blank and not even have a heart. Their emotions are erased. They are conditioned in these video games. They lose their perception of reality versus the game, and it's really a horrible thing. And I really want you to please read this book. I want you, if you have youngsters and they're playing video games, sit down and play a game with them sometime and see what they're doing, because it is vicious, it is ugly, it is horrid. I know in Uvalde, the youngster shot his grandmother. What type of a human would shoot their own grandmother? One thing that's going on is these youngsters are shooting people that they know and love or did love. They are shooting them in the face. And this is something that even soldiers in war generally will not shoot something in the face. They shoot them in the chest cavity in their body. That scenario at the range, it really did rattle me to see how that young man acted. Maybe he truly was just excited to get to go to the range and to learn safety. And he did end up settling down. He did end up focusing. He did end up doing better at the range. But that first initial look on his face terrified me. And it really did shake me to where I was like, am I doing the right thing teaching these youngsters? Am I doing the right thing teaching people about ethics and responsibility and safety? And I will tell you all that, yes, I feel like I am doing the right thing, because I am one of the good things that will touch their lives. And what I think for any and all of us is these youngsters that are doing these crazy things, we all know they're missing the Lord. That's one thing that they're missing 100%. But we have to know they're missing a community, and they're missing relationships with humans. They're missing family time around the table, and they're missing good things in their lives. And they're separated. Our computers and our devices are separating these kids. And if you have the ability to make a community for those kids, if you have the ability to be a friend, be a family member. If you're a family member, you should definitely be putting those devices down, getting rid of those games, and spending actual time with those youngsters, because they desperately need it. I know that was quite lengthy, and it's a lot. It's super heavy. I'm still working my way through it, and I've talked to several other range officers and my higher ups to ask them how we deal with this. And that is my most intense scenario at the range. As I said, I don't know how dangerous it was. I did feel a sense of recklessness on those first couple shots. How do you deal with it? You got to be a community. You got to be supportive. You've got to let them know right from wrong. On that note, it seems like my episodes get so heavy lately, but that was the topic. And so there you go. Whew. I hope that you'll let me know if you have suggestions, because as I said, I'm still working through the emotions of that, and I do hope that they'll all be safe. I know my dad taught me to be safe, and I hope that these youngsters can be safe as well. Anyway, have a great one. Until next time.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah, at miaandstein.com. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today I want to talk to you about danger on the range. That sounds like the opening to like a Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors episode for Halloween. Anyways, so I want to talk to you about dangerous range stuff that I've seen. Now, I've been on the range a lot in the last 20 years or so, and probably the worst accident that I've seen on the range was at a match in Arkansas a few years ago, where the range was built kind of on a hill, and there was a piece of steel that a round ricocheted off and went down towards some of the lower ranges and fell a long ways down and actually went through a guy's forearm. He wasn't seriously injured, but it was pretty nasty looking. But he got it taken care of and actually tried to come back about an hour, 2 hours later from the emergency room and finish the match. So he wasn't terribly hurt. And that was more of a freak accident than dangerous activity. Now, shooting guns is dangerous, period. I mean, that's just end of statement. It's really just the truth. It's dangerous. You got to mitigate those risks by being safe and doing the right things. So I guess the worst things that I've seen at the range is usually involving new shooters or shooters that think they know what they're doing, but they don't really know what they're doing. And what I mean is the people that come out and they do like their TV and movie type gun handling skills. They've watched too many John Wick movies and they start to think that they can run around with a gun and they know what they're doing. Now, running around your house with an empty gun is one thing. Running around a movie set with a gun loaded with blanks is another. But running around a range with a loaded gun that could kill somebody doing some stupid stuff can be tragic. So some of the stuff that I've seen is people moving on the range with their gun up, pointed straight up, not down range. You know, that typical TV cop where their gun is right beside their face or right below their face, pointed straight up. And if you're moving down range and you stumble and trip, that can be pretty bad. How about they're on the range with other people and they're pointing guns at the other people on the range with them in like a tactical class? You know, a couple guys stacked up to go into a shoot house, and first guy's got his gun to go in the door, second and third guys have their guns pointed at the backs of the guys in front of them. Terrible. Bad. They need to really rethink their tactics and what they're doing. Even worse than that is people run around with their finger on the trigger when they're not shooting. So when they're moving between targets or when they're reloading, that's the worst one, reloading. I've heard of a few people that have launched a round up in the air when they slammed a magazine in on a reload because they were pulling the trigger back. If you shoot IDPA, that's why they have these, finger calls and stuff like that. It's because people learn their stupid behaviors from stupid TV shows and stupid movies. The new people that come out that learn from watching TV, movie shows and stuff where they are running in between shooting positions with their gun pointed straight down or, like I said before, straight up. It's just silly. They need to get some training and just stop watching so much TV and believe in what's going on. I was talking to my wife earlier today, and we were talking about how it's funny to me how we have a nation that thinks movie stars are people that should be emulated and looked up to. And really, those are just the people that were in your high school drama classes and doing plays in high school. I don't know about you, but none of the people I grew up with that were in drama were really that bright of folks or were that cool or whatever you want to call it. They weren't. They were kind of strange, and I don't know why we're looking up to them, much less copying them on stuff that they got minimal training to do. Now, does Keanu Reeves run around like he really knows what he's doing, like he's some sort of assassin operator in John Wick movies? Yeah, sort of, but only because he spent a lot of time training with special forces operators and people that have shown him how to handle guns, how to treat them, how to move with them, how to do all the things that he's doing in those movies. And he had lots and lots of practice. And even better than that, lots of good instruction. So if you've never been to a match before, or if you've never been to an instructional class where they've taught you shooting and tactics and moving and shooting and stuff like that, and you go, you want to learn how to do that, go to an IDPA match, go to a USPSA match, but go and watch first just so you can see how they do the things that they do. Don't get so caught up in, man, they're shooting so fast and they're doing this and they're doing that. look at what they're doing in between shooting. So they'll draw and run to a position with the gun pointed downrange with their finger off the trigger, and they'll mount the gun and get in that position, and they'll shoot, and then they'll take their finger off the trigger and get out of that position and run to another spot, and the gun's pointed downrange, and they're being safe, super safe, because it's dangerous, and nobody wants to get hurt. We just want to have fun. So don't be that guy who thinks he's John Wick, or girl that thinks she's Jonah Wick. If you're not, if you haven't had that training, then just say, hey, I haven't had that training. I haven't been bodybuilding, so I don't have, Arnold Schwarzenegger physique. Makes sense, right? Well, if you haven't had the training to shoot and move and shoot and do the things that you want to do, for USPSA or IDPA or even just tactical training, then go get that training. Learn how to practice it, get better, and have fun. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. It's time for Pastoral Pontifications with Pastor John Bennett.
So what is the most dangerous or reckless thing that I have ever seen or done on the range? Well, I'm going to answer both of those, both the most reckless things that I have seen personally, as well as the stupid mistakes that I personally have made as well. So I'd like to start with the most reckless, crazy, stupid, idiotic thing that I have personally witnessed on the range. While I was at seminary, this would have been, I believe, my second year at seminary, myself and a friend, I think Stuart Burt, who we had on this last month's hangout, was there as well as my friend Eric. We went to this outdoor range not too far from the seminary, and we spent a lot of time there. That's where we went for what we called gun therapy. And it was a wide open range. There was no posted rules per se. You had to be a member, though. Membership was only like $20 a year. It was just a ridiculously low price. You couldn't beat it. Well, one day while we were there at the range, and of course, typical etiquette with an outdoor range, you don't shoot ahead of the firing line. If you want to shoot closer, you ask those who you are with there, the other people using the range, if they wouldn't mind moving a little bit closer. In most cases, people don't mind, and once the people that want to shoot closer, you could always just move further back. Anyway, on this particular time where we were there was a couple of young guys, and these guys, some of them were teenagers, maybe even as young as 12 years old. And I can't to this day remember if they actually had an adult come with them to shoot. And we had been there already for a little while. We had probably shot a couple hundred rounds by this point. And this group of young guys, they get all set up, and we witness a young kid, the youngest of the bunch, if my memory serves me correctly. Granted, this was dang near 20 years ago, so I don't know how well I can distinctly remember each and every detail. But anyway, as he was laying in the prone position, shooting downrange, his friend stood right over him and also proceeded to shoot downrange. Now, of course, you can imagine how this could go terribly wrong. All it takes is that kid lying on the ground shooting in the prone position to suddenly stand up, and you end up with a dead kid. Now, if I had to go back and do anything differently, probably would have chewed them out for just being idiots. But at that point, I think we didn't want to get into it. We just packed up our stuff and left. If people were going to be stupid, we just decided, you know what? We're leaving. What lesson could possibly be learned from that? When you go to a communal range, an outdoor range, whether it's a club, whatever the case may be, sometimes when you're there shooting with people who respect firearms and follow the safety rules, you can't guarantee that's going to be the same with everybody else who's there. And, if it's that type of a situation really, you're probably better off just leaving. Leave stupid people to do stupid stuff by themselves. Now, if we wanted to work in a little bit of theology into this, that really isn't the best way to show love toward your neighbor. Granted, I was a much younger man then. This was roughly 20 years ago. If the guy today, myself, were there on that range back then, I probably would have taken some time to carefully, gently, and in the firmest manner possible, even if that sounds like a bit contradictory, explain to them the dangers of the stupidity that they were engaging in. It all goes to show you that with age comes wisdom. I don't think the 20-some-year-old version of me back then would have had the patience to put up with that kind of sheer stupidity. So if you're ever in that kind of a situation, it's entirely up to you. If you feel yourself compelled to gently but firmly correct whoever is doing something stupid on the range, well, all more power to you. If you decide to just walk away, well, I'm not going to fault you for that, because that's exactly what I did. But what about my own stupid things that I've done on the range? When I was really early into guns, this was when I had already taken my call here at St. John's Willow Creek. This was within the first year. And I can call this lesson, just because you think you know a lot about guns doesn't mean you do. I had a friend over. We were shooting a little trap, and I shouldn't have allowed this to happen. This was 100% my fault. I should have taken the responsibility to be safe in all of this, but I had just chambered around, getting ready to shoot, and then the guy that was over here started talking to me. He had distracted me, and I was paying more attention to him and what he was saying rather than paying attention to this loaded 12-gauge shotgun that I had in my hand. Well, I pointed the shotgun towards the ground, not realizing, not even thinking to realize that this dummy had his booger finger in the trigger guard. And as I let that shotgun slowly point towards the ground, I allowed the weight of the shotgun, without even realizing it, of course, until you hear the bang, that the full weight of the shotgun started to rest on my finger, and next thing you know, I almost lost my foot. Now, thanks be to God, that just blasted away the side of my shoe. No people were harmed in this experience, just a pair of shoes. And I was able to laugh about it. No, I'm able to laugh about it here now, talking to you, 16, 17 years after the fact. And if I could think of a practical lesson to learn from this, and this kind of ties into the first story, whenever you're handling a firearm, vigilance is of utmost necessity. Complacency can get you hurt or killed in a hurry. Fortunately, I wasn't harmed in the least bit, and I'm glad that I can talk about this years after the fact. But if that shotgun had been just a half inch or more towards the left, boy, I'd be walking with a limp the rest of my life. We have this awesome responsibility as gun owners, and in many ways it's a fearful responsibility of realizing that we are handling and manipulating these defensive tools that are often used for sporting and just for plain out enjoyment. But yet, if they're not handled properly, they can be incredibly dangerous, and they could lead to injury or even death. Now, since then, I have become a huge stickler for safety at the range. Even if when I take my children, even if it's a stinking BB gun, as I do with my son, I'm constantly reminding him, keep your finger out of that trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. If we're vigilant, if we're responsible, we can have a whole lot of fun, and we can laugh at the stories of the less fortunate like myself later on down the road. Well, that's it for this time. Hope you enjoyed this segment. May God bless you this coming week and have a very blessed Reformation Day celebration.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.